UCL at the end of the 1990s. I stood in front of a room like this to speak to primary PGCE training teachers who were just starting, and I saw the snowy white peaks, and we were in the centre of London. That troubled me. So I spent much of my time since I've been in teacher training kind of questioning what all of that is about. How has it come about, and what can I do to shift and change thinking? So what I'm going to do today is talk to you about how have we arrived at this particular juncture where we're talking about unconscious bias. When Alana first emailed me and asked me about this, she must have thought, oh my God, this woman's a crazy woman, because my emails, she said, oh, I want to do this stuff on unconscious bias, and I was like, while we're talking about this, we need to move beyond it. So what I'm going to talk about today is what is new, what's possible in the area of unconscious bias, what difference can it make in the field of education. And I want to kind of deliberately disrupt that idea that unconscious bias is the kind of way forward, because I think, you know, as I said this morning, it's spawned an industry of unconscious bias training, toolkits, etc., etc. We need to see beyond that and think about how we can move forward and push forward the goals of social justice, equality and equity. So, my first slide, the more things change, the more they stay the same, because I sort of like came and looked at the definition of unconscious bias when it was first introduced to me, and I thought, nothing's changed. And I went back to look at the Swan report, which was published in 1985, to look at what was being said then about the state of race and education in England. Because these things are not new. They tend to be a bit cyclical, in fact. And what Swan was talking about then was that, you know, the diverse nature of British society has evolved over time and in many centuries, but there is an urgency for a need for change in attitudes to ethnic minorities. Okay? I don't think that has changed very much. I think that's still very much the same. The committee that was led by Margaret Swan was created as a result of concerns expressed by the West Indian community during the 1960s and 70s. And those of you familiar with the work of Bernard Cord would know about the little, really, really important book that he wrote about how the West Indian child has made education subhuman. For me, that was a key shift in my own thinking when I was learning to be a teacher. And the report said, as a matter of urgency, the government should institute a high-level and independent inquiry into the causes of the underachievement of children of West Indian origin in maintained schools, and remedial action is required. It took 8 years for that to happen. And in that report, they talk about the fact that this is a complex and important subject. Response to the Education Service to ethnic diversity concerns all who have responsibilities in education, as well as all parents and their children. And it talked about the government being committed to this principle. I picked up a couple of quotes there about teachers as well. It said, teachers from ethnic minorities are regrettably and evidently a minority in themselves. And if you are a black teacher sitting in here, does that have some kind of resonance? No. It also talked about there being a desperate urgency to increase as dramatically and quickly as possible the number of black teachers in Britain's schools. We have gone some way towards that, but I feel that at the moment we're going slightly backwards, and I'll go on to talk to you about that a bit later. So I think it's quite axiomatic that since some 30 years since the Swan report, we're gathered here to talk about the same, if not similar, kinds of concerns. What is clear is that progress has been slow, and along the way we've had some kind of shift and movement. And I think we're in a place that I call semantic soup, in the sense that what we seem to be doing is supplementing different terms to mean the same thing. And my view is we call it what it is. If it's discrimination, that's what it is. If it's prejudice, that's what it is. So I personally don't like the term unconscious bias, because I think it's just another label that's been added on something that we already know about. So we had institutional racism. That came out of the Macpherson report. The Macpherson report, in a sense, forced central government and public organisations to look very, very deeply at themselves and to effect some kind of change. But we know what's happened with that. That kind of focus on race equality as an explicit thing has now been subsumed under more general equalities, and certainly from my observations, its kind of focus has been somewhat opaque for at least the last 7 years. So, unconscious bias as itself, I mean, this morning we talked about unconscious bias being something that, you know, it's to do with neural patterns, it's something we do without knowing, but we get to the point where it's like, so what, or what are we going to do about this? And if I did a bit of digging about to find out what was going on in kind of other sectors. And I was reading an article by Ellen Hewitt in Forbes, writing about unconscious bias in Silicon Valley. And she said, the idea that you can methodically stamp out unconscious bias, also called implicit or hidden bias, has caught fire with tech companies because it's relatively new, data-driven and blameless. Everyone is told they have it and can't avoid it, so no one is singled out or gets defensive. It's a vast improvement on the years when diversity training amounted to lawyers telling managers what to do to cover their backs from lawsuits. Said Frida Kapoor-Klein, a long-time diversity advocate and partner of the Kapoor Centre for Social Impact. In truth, most of the old methods don't work. A 2009 review of hundreds of studies showed that the effects of most diversity efforts, including training, remains unknown. And a 2006 study looking at data from 708 private companies found that diversity training didn't produce more diverse workforces. It's time to start something new. But there's an appeal to unconscious bias. It's a morally correct thing to do. But I think that Ellen Hewitt has hit the nail on the head here. In this kind of post-racial era that we're now living in, we are told that pupils and teachers make progress based on merit. Paul talked about meritocracy being dead. It well and truly is, in my view. And for teachers to make progress, we have to jump through all of these different kinds of hoops. For our children, despite increases in GCSEs, if you look at the work of Steve Strand, what he has shown quite conclusively is that when you take account for race, for ethnicity, for social class, for gender, there still remains an unexplained and disproportionate outcome for BME pupils. So whether you have your unconscious biases or not, and whether you own them or not, structurally, things haven't changed that much. If we think about teachers, the patterns are actually, from where I'm standing, I think they're getting more and more critical. I started off in teacher training working mainly on PGCE programs, but now I've moved more over to more employment-based, and I worked on the Teach First program for a little while. And since the shift to school-based teacher training has taken place, I would say so has the face of those who are coming into teaching. There is very little out there. We don't know the data. There are figures, but they're not shared publicly about what is actually happening in school-based initial teacher training. Who's getting in? Who's training who? We have no idea. But I know when I stand up to teach professional studies to the group of 125 school direct primary students that I teach, I know, I can see, and I can count how many people look like me or people of colour. The numbers are getting more and more and more reduced. The NUT report, which I've seen in the room earlier on, in that report they say that BME staff experience structural barriers such as racism, including assumptions about capabilities based on racial or ethnic stereotypes, where everyday experiences for BME teachers in particular, they spoke about an invisible glass ceiling and a widespread perception amongst senior leadership teams that BME teachers have a certain level and don't go beyond it. It's easy to get seduced into thinking that progress has been made. Yes, it has. We have got more black teachers now than we did 20 years ago, but there are still issues. When we get there, we get to a certain point. Beyond that, it is very, very difficult to move. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult to move. And if we can create, if yes, progress has been made, it's not been fast enough or far-reaching enough. My view is we need to adopt a new approach, a new language, a new understanding. If we can create the circumstances where inequitable outcomes are collectively owned, it's possible to create a new narrative, whilst at the same time allied that burgeoning evidence of inequality. I would like to see in my lifetime for those figures to change. I'm not sure how optimistic I am, really. Okay? We can see these inequalities in many areas, in education, in health, in housing, employment, to name a few. And if we consider these issues intersectionally, the facts are indeed worrying. So, for example, if you're a West African male, you are likely to be very, very well qualified, but it is more likely that you are going to be unemployed. If you are a Caribbean or Muslim male, and between the ages of 16 and 25, and for some reason you've got involved in the justice system, you're more likely to receive a custodial sentence. There is ample evidence out there that inequitable outcomes are as prevalent today as they were 20 years ago. In many respects, it could be argued they've become more pronounced, particularly in this period of austerity. So out of interest, I'd just like to check, has anyone in here done unconscious bias training? How interesting, we've come to a session today to talk about unconscious bias training, about less than 10 of us have actually done it. I did it because I was curious. I wanted to know what my institution was putting out there about unconscious bias. So I thought I'd read my way in. And off I went to this unconscious bias training and brought in these external consultants. And I came out asking myself, so what? I learned a bit about how not to discriminate against people because of their religious observance. I learned not to make judgments about my LGBTQ colleagues. I learned how not to ignore the competencies of some BME staff. But really, it didn't shift me and my thinking much further. And I was asking myself, well, what was going on here? It seemed to me that race diversity training had been rebadged and given a new name. So I think when we're talking about unconscious bias and we're talking about these things, we need to be very, very critical about what we're looking at. Again, there's a quote here from Silicon Valley, so there's quite interesting things going on in IT. And here, Cara Swisher talks about the fact you can't throw a hammer in Silicon Valley these days and not hit a gender or race bias controversy. The problem is everywhere. Uber, Oracle, Google, and VC firms, so many VC firms. The worst is what is widely called unconscious bias. Bias that kicks in automatically with our supposedly unthinking brains, making often inaccurate snap judgments. It's pure laziness by some of the world's smartest and most innovative people to pretend that unconscious bias is something so glaringly clear. Training and classes never seem to solve the problem, no matter how much money is spent. Studies suggest that these programs may actually backfire. Here's a suggestion for tech execs. Pick up your head and look. If you see 10 white men on a board of 10, or an engineering staff that's 80% white and male, with no faces unlike your own, you're not building a meritocracy. Instead, it's a meritocracy. And what's reflected back at you is neither pretty nor unconscious. I think it's quite a pretty powerful kind of statement. Okay? So far I've painted a kind of pretty bleak kind of picture, haven't I? So I know I need to uplift the mood a bit, right? So I'm going to start uplifting us now. So what can we do with all of this stuff that we have out there around unconscious bias? Okay? I think there's some really interesting things happening in other sectors, and I think what tends to happen with us in education is we get our head stuck down in it and we very rarely have time to come up for air. But actually I think there's some interesting things happening within the NHS that we could potentially learn from. So what's going on in the NHS is that they have a similar history to education in terms of inequitable outcomes for minoritized groups. But unlike education, the NHS actually has a much more diverse kind of staff. But those staff, like in education, are found in lower grades, they're treated less favourably in recruitment, promotion, incremental performance awards and bonus payments, and they're more likely to experience bullying and harassment, and are more likely to face disciplinary action. They're also radically underrepresented at senior manager levels. And what the NHS decided is that they needed to make radical kind of change, not a few tweaks here and there, but they really needed to excavate themselves to find out what was going on so they can do things better. So what they did is recognise that the services that the organisation delivers has to embrace diversity as a central facet of its business plans, and that required leadership that recognises the the centrality of diversity as a management practice. So we've heard that kind of discourse before. But what they're doing is actually they're saying, well, no, we know that, we've got to go a bit further. So what they've done is they've actually devised their own equality standard. Okay? And what that standard in a sense has done is to take everything that is known about best practice in equality diversity and concertinaed it together. Okay? And they're using that to make some radical kind of changes in the work that they do. And I think in education we have an opportunity here to look at what's going on in the NHS and not just take it and pick it up and supplant it in our work, but actually have a look at what's happening there and ask ourselves, what can we learn from this in terms of the work that we do? I also think that as leaders in education, leaders need to take ownership. Don't wait for Ofsted to tell you to do something. Head teachers have a lot of power. Yep. Use the power that you have to improve the circumstances for your children and your staff. So, what are some of the key things that I think we can work on in terms of education, what we can learn from the NHS? Leadership and governance is a really important one. So important, Ofsted put it there as a criteria as well. And it's not there just for no reason. I'm a governor in a school, a local school to where I live. And I use my experience as a teacher educator to go in there and ask some very, very difficult questions about the quality of teaching in the school. And to ask very, very difficult questions about why do we have these differential patterns in terms of pupil outcomes, given the starting points that these children have. What is going on in this school that is leading to these patterns? Okay? So I think leadership and governance can really bring about